Let me take you back to July 23rd, 2016. Y'all remember where you were? Probably not. I do. That was the morning I was diagnosed with cancer. I was getting on stage to an audience just like this. At 7:50, my phone rang, and it was my physician telling me, this is 10 minutes before I'm supposed to start a keynote, saying to me, Todd, I have the results of your biopsy. It's not what we wanted to hear. I said, well, apparently I don't want to hear it any more than you do. It's amazing how anxiety and humor become weirdly related. He said, you have cancer. Okay. So my response was, can I still go do this keynote because I don't want to give the money back? And two, am I going to die from this? And he said, not right away, but we need to talk. Okay. I took the deepest breath of my life, ladies and gentlemen, because I had to do what? Go on that stage and sell myself. I had to be present because I wasn't going to blow it. Just wasn't going to let that happen. Walked on stage, deepest breath of my life, went like this, took a class in mindfulness with my wife many years ago before we got married to reduce stress. We failed the course. The stress of failing it has been monumental. Walked onto that stage, delivered the keynote in a state of absolute numbness. Came off the stage, said goodbye to everybody. People wanted to buy books and stuff. I just said, I got to go. Packed up my things very quickly, got into my car, drove down the end of the block, called my wife and said, I have cancer. She started to cry. I started to cry for about 15 seconds, and then both of us are like, okay, now what? Called the doctor back, and he said, Todd, you need to go have a couple of tests, which I did. Dog scans, pet scans, cat scans. I had every kind of scan known to man. Everything except to find out if there was something up here. And then I went to meet a surgeon. Thankfully, I was eligible for a specific kind of robotic procedure because the cancer, fortunately, was caught fairly early. It was aggressive and early. The doctor and his team are located at the University of Pennsylvania. Big, big, big medical system. No different than your MD Anderson or Fred Hutchinson in Seattle or any of the large groups in the country that are doing amazing life-saving work. The appointment was for 8:30. My wife and I showed up at 8:15. At 8:30, a gentleman came around from behind the desk and walked up and said, Mr. Cohen, I forget his name, honestly. I'm John. We want to get you going. And then walked to my wife. I'm not saying you look like my wife, because that would be a gigantic insult to her. But in any event, walked to my wife and said, Mrs. Cohen, and she said, that'll be Miss Schiffman. Welcome. We're going to take care of you. Now, that may just sound like customer service to you, right? I'm a consumer making a $276,000 decision to give a piece of business to somebody because I have a choice. Handed us the paperwork. I did the paperwork. I'm nervous. I'm sweating. This is not where I wanted to be. Did the paperwork, handed it back, and I thought I would have to settle in for the long wait. Everybody in that office was making eye contact with me. Everybody was available and present. Nobody was on their dang phones. Nobody had anything to do other than focus on me and every other patient in there. I was made to feel like I was the only person in their world. So he came up and said, okay, we're going to get you started. 5 minutes later, I'm like, this is great. I'll be out of here and I can go do something else. I began to forget why I was there. So he brought us into a little nice waiting room. Thankfully, I didn't have to put on one of those, this is too much information for anybody who's just eaten. I didn't have to put on any gown. I could just sit there with my wife And the appointment, as I said, was for 8:30. At 8:40, I heard a knock on the door, and in walks a gentleman in a perfectly clean, starched white lab coat, shine shoes, tie was tied. I noticed these things. I'm making a buying decision. That's a sales moment right there. So he walked in and he said, I'm gonna shake your hand again. He goes, Mr. Cohen, I'm Russ. And I said, first of all, it's Todd. And then I won't use you again. And then he said, Miss Schiffman, right? So somebody, I know it's not you. I know, no. There's one in every crowd. All right, so, and I said, Russ, what do you do? Think about that question. What do you do? He could have said, I'm the fellow, I'm the resident. I don't care. That doesn't matter to me. I know what your title is. What do you do? He said, I'm the opening act for Dr. Lee. And literally, opening in his case meant opening. He sat down. He said, I am here to make sure you leave here ready. Selling moment. We spent an hour and 15 minutes. An hour and 15 minutes just talking. Answering questions. He's drawing pictures. He's showing me videos. I'm ready to throw up. I'm like, all right. At the end of that, he said, any other questions? I said, no. I said, am I done? He goes, no. I said, I'm the opening act. This was like an amazing experience. He gets up. He says, nice to meet you. Here's my cell phone number. Here's my card. Any and every question, I am here. I said, you're a great sales guy. You know what his response was? He goes, I'm not in sales. I said, au contraire. I said, that's French. He said, I know, I'm from New Orleans. So he walks out, and a minute later, the door knocks again. There's a knock on the door again. The door is not knocking. In which case, the hospital would have been haunted. And in walks another gentleman, Dr. David Lee. David walks right up and says, Mr. Cohen, I'm David. And then he walks, then he says to my wife, Miss Schiffman, I hear you're a lawyer. I said, Dr. Lee, I said, I'm really rather not be here. I said, but Russ just gave us a great run through. I said, I got a question for you. What do you do? And I will tell you the rest of that story in just a little while. So this is me, much later in my life. This is actually last November, November 6th to be exact. My surgery for prostate cancer was November 16th, 2016, excuse me. Thankfully, it went well. It was textbook. This was me and Dr. Lee, who did not want to have his picture taken because he's a very shy, unassuming man. But then he said, but everybody asks. This was me at my 1-year check. Thank you, God, everything is good. I have 1 more year to go till I feel like I'm really out of the woods, but everything looks good. My wife took the picture after saying, you don't really want to do this. I'm like, yeah, I do. Remember I said Dr. Lee walked into the office and I said, what do you do? Well, Russ said, I'm the opening act. Dr. Lee never said, I've done 5,100 of these surgeries. I do 20% of this procedure for the entire East Coast. 10% of my business comes from overseas. I've written the preeminent textbook on this, blah, blah, blah. All true, by the way. Never said any of that. What he said was so simple and elegant and comforting and deflating in terms of fear that I let him do the surgery. I'm the guy who will get you back on your feet. That's what he said. That's all I needed to hear. And in one fell swoop, ladies and gentlemen, he sold me on him versus the 2 other surgeons in Philly, the guy in Johns Hopkins that I could look at, 2 people at Sloan Kettering, etc. I'm the guy who will get you back on your feet, and he did.